The night Beijing held its breath, the city lights flickered like 1,000 restless stars. Somewhere between glass towers and quiet alleyways, two names glowed on billboards, phones, and whispered conversations: Wang Yibo and Xiao Zhan. They were not standing side by side, not sharing the same stage, not walking the same road. Yet, somehow, their footsteps echoed each other across time and space. Two journeys, one impact. The roar of engines sliced through the air at the international racing circuit. Wang Yibo stood at the edge of the track, helmet tucked under his arm, eyes sharp and focused. The world saw a superstar actor, a dancer, an idol. But here, under the scorching sun and the smell of burning rubber, he was just a racer chasing seconds, fractions of a heartbeat that separated victory from failure. The signal lights flashed. Red, 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 green. The bike leaped forward like a beast unleashed. The crowd became a blur. Wind screamed against his helmet as Yibo leaned into the curve, body and machine moving as one. This was where his soul felt loudest, not under stage lights, but on asphalt, where fear and freedom collided. In that split second, as his tires kissed the edge of danger, Yibo smiled. This was his language. Speed. Risk. Silence between heartbeats. Miles away, in a softly lit recording studio, Xiao Zhan closed his eyes as the final note lingered in the air. The room was quiet, but his chest felt full, like a story just told had settled gently into the world. Again, the producer asked. Xiao Zhan nodded, smiling softly. He always believed there was one more layer of truth to uncover, one more emotion to polish until it shone. Where others chased perfection, he chased sincerity. The microphone caught every breath, every subtle tremor in his voice. It wasn't loud like a roaring engine, but it was powerful, like a hand reaching through sound, touching hearts that didn't even know they needed comfort. Morning headlines told two different stories. Wang Yibo dominates the track with fearless precision. Xiao Zhan releases a song that brings fans to tears. Different worlds. Same electricity. Yibo's life had always been movement. Dance floors, film sets, racetracks, airports. He lived between destinations, always chasing the next challenge. His managers worried sometimes. Why risk injury? Why push so hard? But Yibo never explained. Some things could only be felt. Late at night, alone in his apartment, he watched old dance videos of himself, practicing until his muscles screamed. Back then, no applause, no fame, just stubborn belief. He whispered to the reflection in the mirror, again. Across the city, Xiao Zhan sat by his window, sketchbook resting on his knees. The city hummed below, alive and relentless. He drew quietly, faces, emotions, moments that words couldn't capture. Fame had found him unexpectedly, like a sudden storm. He welcomed it with grace, but never let it change the gentle rhythm of his heart. Sometimes he wondered how many people leaned on his songs during lonely nights. Sometimes the thought scared him. Responsibility was heavier than success. He turned a page and wrote a line beneath a sketch. If my voice can be a light, let it be warm. The awards season arrived like a tidal wave. Flashing cameras, red carpets, reporters shouting questions over one another. Wang Yibo stepped out of a sleek black car, expression calm, aura sharp. Fans screamed his name, voices cracking with excitement. He bowed slightly, respectful, distant. The world wanted mystery, and he gave it effortlessly. Inside the hall, applause thundered as his name echoed from the stage. He accepted the trophy with a simple nod. "This is just the beginning," he said, voice steady. At another event, Xiao Zhan stood beneath softer lights, dressed elegantly, smiling with genuine warmth. When his name was called, his eyes shimmered, not with surprise, but gratitude. "Thank you," he said gently. "I hope I can continue to bring stories and music that stay with you, even after the lights go out." Two speeches, two energies. Fans watched both, arguing playfully online. He's fire. He's healing. And somehow both were true. Then came the storm. Fame is never gentle forever. Rumors spread like wildfire, distorted truths, exaggerated shadows. Headlines sharpened their teeth. Silence became louder than words. Wang Yibo responded by riding faster. On a quiet track at dawn, he pushed his bike harder than ever, corners tighter, speed more reckless. Every lap burned frustration into motion. Every turn was a scream he never voiced. When he finally stopped, breath ragged, helmet off, sweat mixing with dust, he stared at the empty stands. "Is this enough?" he asked the wind. Xiao Zhan chose stillness. He stepped away from the noise, retreating into music, scripts, and solitude. He read letters from fans, handwritten words filled with hope, pain, gratitude. One letter read, "Your voice kept me alive." Xiao Zhan pressed it to his chest, tears slipping quietly. In moments like this, quitting was never an option. Time passed. Not everything healed, but both grew stronger. Yibo took roles that demanded depth, characters fractured and fierce. On set, directors watched him transform, emotion burning behind controlled silence. He didn't need many lines. His eyes spoke storms. During one intense scene, after the director yelled cut, the set fell silent. No one moved. That, the director finally said, voice shaking, was unforgettable. Xiao Zhan returned with a performance, so raw it felt like confession. On stage, lights dimmed, music rose, and his voice carried pain, hope, resilience, all woven into melody. Fans cried openly. Some held hands. Some closed their eyes. In that moment, it didn't matter who stood beside whom in the past. What mattered was what stood before them now, truth. One rainy evening, their paths crossed, not in headlines, not in controversy, but quietly backstage at a charity event. No cameras, no screams, just two men standing under dim lights, rain tapping against the roof. Yibo nodded first. "Long time." Xiao Zhan smiled. "Yeah, you look stronger." "So do you." They stood in comfortable silence, understanding more than words could say. Different battles. Same scars. People think impact comes from standing together. Xiao Zhan said softly. Yibo smirked. Sometimes it comes from surviving alone. They shared a quiet laugh, not loud, not dramatic. Real. When they walked onto the stage separately that night, the audience rose as one. Applause thundered, not for nostalgia, not for comparison, but for resilience. Years later, documentaries would call it legacy. They would analyze statistics, awards, trends. But fans remembered moments. A dance move that stole breath. A song that saved a night. A character that felt real. A smile that felt like home. Different journeys. Same impact. And somewhere in the ever-moving city, two lights continued to shine, never competing, never dimming, proving that greatness doesn't need one path. It only needs truth. Wang Yibo learned the language of discipline early. The dance studio lights flickered above him, reflecting off the mirrored wall that showed a boy far younger than his ambition. Sweat clung to his black t-shirt, hair plastered to his forehead. Music stopped, but he didn't. His feet kept moving, repeating the same sequence again and again. One more time. His instructor sighed. "Yibo, that's enough for today." Yibo shook his head. Again. Every step had to be sharp. Every beat had to land like a promise kept. When others laughed during breaks, he replayed choreography in his mind. When others slept, he stretched aching muscles, whispering to himself that pain was temporary, but regret would last forever. There were days he went home barely able to lift his arms. Days his body begged him to quit, but quitting never entered his vocabulary. Movement was his escape. Dance was his rebellion against mediocrity. Xiao Zhan's battle was quieter, but no less intense. He sat in a small room, sketchpad balanced on his knees, pencil gliding softly across the page. Outside, the world rushed forward, loud and impatient. Inside, Xiao Zhan breathed slowly, carefully, as if afraid to disturb the fragile dream forming in his chest. He wasn't born into certainty. He didn't grow up believing stardom was inevitable. For him, art was a question mark, a what-if whispered in the dark. He studied. He worked. He followed the rules. Yet every night, after responsibility was done, he returned to creativity, drawing, singing softly, exploring emotions he didn't yet have words for. "Am I too late?" he once asked his reflection. The mirror didn't answer, but his heart refused to let go. Opportunity, never arrives dressed in certainty. For Yibo, it came like a storm. One audition, then another. Rooms filled with talented faces, all sharp, all hungry. He rarely spoke. He let his body speak for him. Sharp turns, explosive jumps, controlled power. Judges leaned forward. Who is that kid? Yibo bowed and left the room without looking back. Celebration could wait. There was always something to improve. Late nights turned into early mornings. Flights blurred into hotel rooms. Fame began knocking, but Yibo never rushed to open the door. He stayed focused, grounded, distant. He understood something early. Talent opens doors. Discipline keeps them open. Xiao Zhan's break came gently, almost shyly. A role, a chance, a small spotlight. He prepared obsessively, not because anyone demanded it, but because he feared letting the opportunity down. Scripts became his companions. He read lines until they felt like lived memories. On set, he listened more than he spoke. Watched. Learned. A senior actor once pulled him aside and said, "You're different. You feel before you perform." Xiao Zhan smiled politely, but inside, the words echoed. Feeling was his compass. Emotion was his anchor. While others chased attention, he chased connection. The world began to notice. Slowly at first. Clips went viral. Fans shared edits. Comments multiplied. Who is this dancer with the cold eyes? Why does his voice feel like a hug? Wang Yibo and Xiao Zhan, two names appearing on different screens, in different contexts, touching different nerves of the same generation. Yibo stood on stage, lights cutting through darkness, music pounding like a second heartbeat. His movements were sharp, almost dangerous, every gesture screaming confidence, rebellion, fire. Xiao Zhan stood before a microphone, eyes closed, voice trembling just enough to feel real. His words wrapped around listeners, soft but unforgettable. Fire and warmth, speed and stillness. Behind the scenes, the struggles deepened. Yibo's schedule became unforgiving. Expectations climbed higher. One mistake could be magnified 1,000 times. He learned to wear silence like armor. Interviews asked about pressure. He shrugged. "I just do my job." But at night alone, he stared at the ceiling, muscles aching, mind racing. Success was loud. Fear was louder. What if he slowed down? What if he fell? So he ran faster. Xiao Zhan felt pressure differently. Criticism cut deeper because he felt deeper. Every word, good or bad, settled somewhere inside him. He learned to smile through storms, to bow through doubt. One evening, after a long rehearsal, he sat alone in the empty theater. Rows of chairs stared back at him like silent judges. "Will they still listen tomorrow?" he whispered. The stage didn't answer, but he stayed anyway. Then came the turning point, the moment when ambition met destiny. A project that demanded everything. For Yibo, it was a role that stripped him bare. No flashy moves, no shortcuts, just raw emotion beneath controlled restraint. He trained, studied, broke himself down to rebuild something stronger. On set, when the camera rolled, the room held its breath. Cut! No one spoke. The director finally exhaled. That was dangerous. Yibo nodded, chest rising and falling. Dangerous meant real. For Xiao Zhan, it was a performance that exposed his soul. A character layered with pain, hope, contradictions. He poured himself into it, heart first, unguarded. When the final scene ended, tears streamed down his face, not for the character, but for himself. He had crossed a line he could never uncross. The audience felt it. Numbers exploded. Fans multiplied. The world leaned in. Two journeys accelerating on different tracks, yet drawing closer in impact. People compared them, debated them, chose sides, but neither of them was racing the other. They were racing themselves. Late one night, Yibo stood on a rooftop overlooking the city. Neon lights pulsed below like veins of electricity. "I'm not done," he said quietly. Miles away, Xiao Zhan finished writing lyrics in his notebook, closing it gently. "I'll keep going," he promised himself. Different rooms. Same resolve. This was only the beginning. Before the storms. Before the legacy. Before history carved their names into something permanent. Two young men stood at the edge of greatness, unaware of how many lives they would touch, how many hearts they would change. Different journeys. same impact. And the story was far from over. If you enjoyed this continuation and felt the passion, struggle, and rise in this story, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring more powerful stories like this to life.